So the reminder was from Module 5 to use a scholarly resource. And you can do that easily by, say, defining your subgenre from somewhere outside, or from like defining the element of fiction. And there's a lot of other questions in there that, just find an expert to back up what you're thinking. And the idea that the reason that SNHU keeps pushing you into scholarly resources, even though you're creative writers, is that there is a whole conversation out there about what genres are, what elements of fiction are, and they just want you to be aware of that conversation and be a part of it. It's fascinating to see how many writers are then, putting craft essays up on like LitHub or something. So, I mean, being able to write a craft essay kind of shows that you're arriving as a writer as well, if that makes sense. I mean, look at Stephen King, right? He did a whole book, well, more than one, on writing, which is funny because that's the title. Okay, so let me try to get my mouse to Module 6. And there we're doing a discussion board, which we haven't had a discussion board in a while, like a real one. So be prepared for a real discussion board where you have an initial post due by Thursday. And then you have a short paper that is a critical analysis of characterization. And O'Brien's The Things They Carried, which is a story within his larger novel by the same name. Mm-hmm. And it's a novel, but it's very, very autobiographical. I've taught it a bunch as obviously I used to teach at a military academy, so it's perfect for that. And it's a pretty amazing story. And in his book, if you ever read it, there's How to Tell a True War Story is a fantastic question of craft, right? And how you tell a story, and what matters and what details matter and how it changes depending on the information you give. But it's done in story format. So it's done like a military guy trying to figure out how best to tell the story. So I recommend it too. And in that, I guess I should pop open the guidelines, but I know it's going to tell you to use scholarly resources, but I'll pop in there and make sure. You have to have original ideas that are well developed and provide clear insight. And then with the elements of fiction, you're analyzing and providing concrete examples. So you're always looking for that kind of language. So concrete examples means you're quoting from the text. But yeah, incorporates evidence from the story analyzed. Doesn't require research. How about that? That's probably one of the only papers that you'll come across that's new that doesn't require research. Okay, so do you feel good about what's coming up? Do you have questions for me?
I have a question. The casebook essays that were in our textbook, mm-hmm. that they seem to have come from either essays or presentations that these writers have given. Do those count as scholarly resources?
I guess, yeah. They're not fantastic though. I mean, like, I'd be more excited about a different scholarly resource, but yes.
Right. Or for what was the book? Like Writing Down the Bones, I think was a book that you recommended to us. Would that count as a scholarly resource?
Absolutely. Okay. And that, as you know, like in creative writing, a scholarly resource slightly different than, say, something for literature, right?
Right.
So any author like that who's writing about craft counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm used to looking for journals, so.
Right.
Do those books count?
Oh yeah. In fact, in creative writing, you're going to run across probably a lot more books that are resources than journals. There aren't nearly as many journals on craft as there are. I mean, there are, but I mean, there's a lot more books out there on how to do that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Any more?
In that vein, I don't know what I'm going to pick yet, but just options open. Do masterclasses, the masterclass program, count as a scholarly? I mean, it's still right. It's writers more talking about the craft, but I don't know if it counts as scholarly necessarily.
Yeah, I accept them all. I'm interchanging the word scholarly and expert for this class. Because scholarly would be like, somebody holding a PhD, which isn't really relevant. It's not, it isn't done the same way in the creative writing world. So just an expert, yes. Okay. Scholarly that's the word they used, but I think that word that's why I'm here to interpret the class for you. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Again, with the resources, if for some reason sometimes when I go in and I'm trying to find the resources, I come across like other papers written by other students, like master students that have been peer reviewed and published in journals. Would those be allowed for a scholarly resource as well?
Yeah, if they're peer reviewed and published in a peer reviewed publication, they're fine. That's the real standard for publication.
Sweet.
I mean, for scholarly. Okay. So we're off to a good start. Are you guys having just so much fun, or like a million tons of fun reading everybody's work?
So much fun.
Right?
I've actually really enjoyed some of the stories that I've written. I thought were really clever.
Yeah. You see why I
No,
love it? People's
I
minds.
absolutely love reading everybody's stories. I love it. It's fun
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, and isn't it just fantastic the way that, I mean, you know, I watch moves that people who publish books have made, and I admire them so much. And then I watch moves that all of you are making, and it's the same thing. It's so creative. I'm like, I never would have thought of that. So I can't wait to read these and stop fighting with computers and just do the part I like. Very sorry they're not read yet. Normally, I would be done by now because this is my favorite part, is reading your writing, but that's what I have for this afternoon and tomorrow. Okay, so do you want to do some writing?
Sure.
Yes, don't tell my boss. Yes.
You're just taking notes. Just take some notes. I think this is an excellent use of your time, but I'm probably not the right person to make that decision. Okay, so, oh, shoot. Yes, I am on the right one. Let me do share screen. Let me find my mouse. Share screen. Will it share the other screen? I don't know. Let's find out. Haha. But hey, you're going to see extras, and don't read ahead. Are you seeing display? No.
Yes.
Okay, good. What you're seeing is a balloon man. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good. That's actually an image of the goat-footed balloon man from it's not scrolling. There we go. E.E. Cummings. So one of the things I do sometimes to get juices flowing is to do a poem. So I'm going to read this poem to you all, and then I'm going to give you the first prompt. And while I'm reading the poem, I want you to be thinking also about that. Just sort of breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and try to center yourself in a calm place. And I don't know why I capitalized the E.E. in Cummings, nor that there's periods there, because he doesn't do his name. But anyway, this poem is in jest, because most of his poems are titled by the first line. In just spring, when the world is mud luscious, the little lame balloon man whistles far and wee. And Eddie and Bill come running from marbles and prairies, piracies, and it's spring. When the world is puddle wonderful, the queer old balloon man whistles far and wee. And Betty and Isabel come dancing from hopscotch and jump rope, and it's spring, and the goat-footed balloon man whistles far and wee. He reads it that way. I have a recording of him reading the poem somewhere, and he actually kind of like a whistle. So I tried. Okay, I'm going to scroll down so you can't do, well, you can still see some of it. The first one is an improv writing prompt. And so with this one, what happens is I pull the book that is underneath everything. Shoot, where is it? And what I do is about every 20 to 30 seconds within about a 6 or 7 minute prompt, I'm just going to flip a page, stick my finger on there, and give you a word. And as you're writing from this first prompt, I want you to try to incorporate the word I give you and let it like change what's happening in your narrative, however it might, or it might not hardly change it at all. That's up to you. But it's called improv writing, and it's my friend Kelly Tanner Beckenroth who came up with this. And it's basically to throw things at you and see what happens with it. So the beginning of the prompt is, it was fun being blank. So you can take it from your personal perspective, do nonfiction if you want, or you could do something like take a character that you're writing about, and the character is fun being blank, or your character could be, I hated being blank, right? So you can take it in either direction depending on what type of character you have. But like, it was fun being blank, it was awful being blank, I hated being blank, I loved being blank, whatever it is. So think about that for a sec, so that you have a first sentence you can do. And then I am just going to flip through the book in my hands, which is Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And we will see what happens. Okay, so I think we're doing pretty well on time. Let's do 7 minutes, all right? Begin with, it was fun or awful or hated or loved being blank. I'm going to start the timer, and in about 20-30 seconds, I'll come back in with a word. And your marks, get set, go. Dazzling. Craved. Lonely. Started. Clock.
Was that pluck or cluck? Okay.
Like a clock, like a TikTok clock. Detours. Excuse me, detours. Poignant. Angry. Power.
What was the word again?
Power. Explain. Stellar. Okay, I'll let you go for the last minute with curry,
Curry is in the spice.
if you choose, or curry is in curry a horse, either one. Okay, try to wrap things up. How'd it go? Got some thumbs up.
My heart's beating so
That one
fast.
was hard. I
This is-
didn't get like 4 or 5 of the words.
Yeah, it came at you kind of fast. And also because they don't have really probably anything to do with the story typically, you're like, oh, how am I going to fit it in?
Hmm.
Which is exactly the point.
I was good until the word curry. That was the one that threw me because I was like, I don't even know what curry tastes like. I was a picky eater for most of my life. I'm heavily working on it, but I was like, oh no. Okay. So I made something up and I don't even
I
know if
loved
it's true, but I just went with it.
You could have curried a horse.
Yes, you said that. I was like, what is that? I don't think I know. I don't think I've ever heard it that way. So I didn't want to use a word I wasn't 100% positive what I was exactly saying.
Yeah.
So.
You know, I said into my 40s that I didn't like curry, and it turns out I love it. So
Never had it, but
It has to
I
be
have
cooked
it
right.
There's so many varieties.
Yeah. And
And
especially when I get to cook my own, it's not too hot for me. So
Mhm.
you can pick your spices. It's good. I've
Yeah.
become a much more adventuresome eater. Does anybody have anything they want to share with the group? We all have to understand with each other that, this can result in some funkiness. I see Candy raising her hand. You want to go first?
Sure. Okay. It was fun being in Bath, England. The history, the architecture, the museums were so amazing. The Roman baths were my favorite site to visit, though eating at the local McDonald's was dazzling. Their fries reminded me of home. However, I felt a bit lonely as I strode through the city. I started to feel low because my friends were missing out on this amazing city. Then I heard the cluck of the ducks at the nearby pond and took a detour to the park to relax. As I sat there, I told myself I shouldn't, I had a poignant moment. I don't know if I use that word. I shouldn't feel angry at my friends. Shouldn't feel angry that my friends don't travel with me. It's their loss. They chose not to empower themselves to visit this wonderful city. And I shouldn't have to explain why I chose to go off the beaten path and explore cities that aren't featured in the latest stellar blockbuster movie. I sat for a few more moments, then my stomach started to growl. Time to try that world famous curry at the local restaurant.
That's so good.
That was so good. I loved it.
You pulled it off. I'm so impressed.
Yeah.
What part did you like of it? Like what of the writing did you like? What happened?
I liked the full narrative arc. Like, even though we were doing this, I completely understood what was going on, and it's like, okay, she's on her own, but it's okay, even though her friend's like, okay, I'm gonna do that. I really liked how it flowed.
Yeah, what's Candy's theme in that piece?
Oh,
Oh, we can tell you.
I'm like,
Traveling food.
Yeah, like, it's okay to be on your own.
yeah, contentment. That's the word I was going for. Contentment with your choices, and yes.
Yeah. Living her life to her fullest.
If you wait on your friends to go somewhere with you, you'll never go. So
It's so true.
Especially if
so
I'm
true.
I loved being like the pandemic was perfect for me. It's like, oh, I can't go anywhere. It's awful.
You're the introvert.
I think it's interesting, Candy, that you went in a travel direction because your main story was about the trip to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're like, off overseas, and I really like that. Like I could have picked this from a group of people without a name on it and known that it was yours.
True enough. That's also it's like a lifestyle choice for most of the people around you, right? Except for the people who are involuntarily stationed over there.
well, yeah, I think there's a few there's not very many people overseas that don't volunteer. And especially if you're a civilian, because then you have to accept the job to come.
Mhm.
And then a lot of the services now, they made a big change since I got out, that a lot of times you have to actually accept the position to go overseas. So it's not involved,
Interesting.
except for a few places, like I think Korea still
Yeah, Korea. My brother didn't get to pick.
didn't pick, but for overseas people still.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my boss is really loud. I'm sorry.
You can always mute while he's talking if you want. Does anybody else want to read? Kelly.
I will. Oh, okay. She can go
You want to
first.
go first? It's fine.
No, you go ahead.
And then Jasmine.
It was fun being with Cordy. He was a bit harder than David, but that was a fierce protectiveness. David was dazzling. His smile made... Well, I can't read my own handwriting. His easy smile had you crave his attention. Sometimes watching him with others made Rebecca feel lonely. She started to wish she could be more open, knowing that she wasn't in her I have no idea what I wrote. Sorry, I don't know what that word is. Oh, I was thinking of clock next. That's what happened. I was writing another word down. The hands on the clock took no detours, one number after the next, repeating the cycle. To a degree, we were like that too. It was poignant in a way, though occasionally it filled Rebecca with anger. There was power in accepting who you were, but also a type of shared sadness for what you let go. Cordy explained his life growing up in Germany, his German beautiful to my ears as he was from northern Germany with the stellar French accent smoothing over the edges of the German language. We ate at an Indian restaurant where there was an abundance of curry. That was where I lost it. I don't know if there's curry in Germany. I mean, I assume so. I know there's a huge Indian food in London, but I was like, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, probably more Turkish, right? Candy, but still there's curry, right?
Yeah, but if you go to England, it's like becoming their national food now.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
everywhere has curry. So, and I still don't know. I thought there was 1,000 different ways to cook chicken. I didn't know there was 1,000 different ways to cook curry.
Yeah. So what stood out for y'all for Kelly's piece?
Sorry, I couldn't
I
read
like-
handwriting.
I like the tick-tock of the clock. That really was like, it gave it like a different sort of, like it brought like a different sort of like sense to the story. At first it was kind of like we're there, and then the clock, and they were like, oh, okay, it's just not. It's very, it made it, to me, it made it more like intense, more of like a pressure as it was going on.
So you not only got grounded in scene by the sound, but the clock's present also pushed like the rhythm of the piece because you knew she was running out of time as well. Is that it? Nice. Yeah. I really like the way
Something about accepting yourself that I really liked, by the way.
there was a power, right? That was the one I was about to say.
Yes.
There's a power in being able to accept yourself or something. That was my favorite line. And I loved because I threw power. So, you know, would that line have been in there if I hadn't been throwing? Who knows, right?
I recognized the characters from the story that you submitted. And so I was like, yeah. And then I was really impressed with how you were able to keep with the consistent kind of tone that you had set up in your story with these random words thrown in, but the characterization was still consistent. And it just really shows that you know your characters really well. So whatever situation they're in, this is how she would think. You know.
Nice. Good point, Jess. Okay, so we're on to Jasmine, I think.
Okay, well, I went a total different direction, so it was fun being her friend. Having no perceived light of my own, the reflection of her light was dazzling. At her side, I felt truly alive for the first time, craved her company, and I like to think she lifted me up as she lifted me without knowing, and in her presence, I started becoming aware of who I was, who I'd been, who I wanted to be. Every minute of the clock before her felt like hours, but in her presence, the hours felt like seconds. It's funny how life gives us detours. Without her, I think of the roads my life may have taken. It was poignant, really, the connection between us. I soothed her when she became angry, and she gave me inner power when I felt helpless. She was my yang, and I her yang. It could be explained that she was the other half of myself, the parts I was missing. And I like to imagine that I fulfilled the same function for her. I had stellar intuition, and I used it to find that which would complete me. Her existence curried me, corralled me, trained me into being the best me. Without her, I could have never learned about myself.
That was good.
That was very good.
Oh, that was fun. What stood out for you all?
Kind of a collective note. I like how we all have themes of identity kind of going through and like finding yourself so far. I just think it's interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. This actually happened time in the Zooms that we do for morning meditation where a common theme will come through and we're in like different states.
The ending really stood out for me. Like you could kind of tell throughout the story, the influence that she was having on your life. But when we hit the end and it talked, being someone who grew up around horses, I really got the currying, the training, the corralling made sense, because if you have a horse that's green or that's kind of been neglected in the field and hasn't been given a lot of attention, it takes a lot of physical hands on to not necessarily break the horse again, but to get it back into its self where it can be around others and be more docile with people. And so that kind of stood out.
I really like the pacing, the rhythm of the words and the phrases, especially moving towards the end. I thought it was very musical, almost poetic, and you were still able to bring in all those words that were being thrown out, and it made sense.
Yeah, those are great observations. And isn't it neat that that kind of thing can happen? Because that happened a little with Kelly too, in such a short period of time. Like you learn that you have a writing style that starts emerging, especially when you get thrown into a situation like this word throw, where I'm like, and take stellar, which you used really well. And I love the line when you said about the detour. I think you said, life can take detours. Like it was a thought, right? Yeah. And I like how the throw words are causing the narrative voices in all three of you so far to pause for a moment and have a thought. Like Candy thought about friends not coming, and you thought about the possibility of power and the choices, and you thought about detours. And so, your brain was having to do something, and that was the point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else want to read? Oh, Tabitha.
Okay, so I went a whole other different direction than all of that. Okay. So it was fun being off the road. Lake Ledge was much more welcoming up close than it had looked from the back of a Sol day. The windows were dazzling from the melted snow, and I craved the warmth of the fires inside. I had imagined the town to feel lonely since the path had seemed so muddy and isolated. As we started up the ramp towards the end, I could smell the aroma of a cooking meat coming from nearby. I thought it was from a chimney, but outside of the end, there was a massive boar roasting on a spit. The man turning it created the tick-tock sound of a clock with each rotation, and a chicken clucked from the pen beyond. I was so glad we hadn't detoured anywhere else to stop, because the village was inviting. Still, overhead, the poignant presence of the dragon was looming over me. I knew we would be facing him soon, but how would I feel? Would he be angry at us for disturbing him, or would he look to kidnap me and devour me? After all, the tent had been warded from beings like him, from his power to sense pure humans. As a woman as well, I was right up the dragon's palate for dinner. Also, seeing as he was young, I could make for an interesting addition to his collection. Neither Belinus nor Foylan had explained which he preferred. I only knew he had captured that priestess and that he liked stories. I hoped I wouldn't become either of my worries, so I pushed it aside as Odell led us into the inn. The door was painted with a stellar mural reflecting constellations I didn't recognize, but that seemed familiar. As the inn door opened, I almost groaned in delight. The unmistakable scent of curry carried out, making me salivate. I was longing for something besides the barely seasoned wild game I'd had on the trail. Foylan squeezed my hand with a soft chuckle. Hungry, he teased, his elvish eyes dancing in the lanterns above us. Shut up, I stuck my tongue out at him as the door closed behind us.
Love it.
God, you must have been typing. Tell me you were typing. Because you got so much in. It was so fast.
Yes, I did. I was typing. I'm at work. And it's actually, I've been stuck on this chapter for my novel that I've been working on for like 2 years. And I was like, okay, this makes so much sense. Let's just work on this chapter. And so I did.
So we actually helped you unstick a little bit.
A little bit.
That's like
Okay.
my favorite. I makes me so happy. Okay, what's all your favorites, people? Would you like?
I think I told this to Jessica in a review of one of her 3 options. I love dragons, so as soon as the dragon was mentioned, so happy. Like I loved how it seems so ordinary, and I was like, oh, this is so relaxing, and I like this, and then oh, there's a dragon, and I went, yes.
I just sat up and
Yes,
took
it
that.
I just, like, after you mentioned the dragon, I started to think, I can't help it. So I was thinking that the dragon was gonna eat her up like curry.
Oh,
I thought that
I mean,
too.
he might. We don't know yet.
yeah. I mean, like she wants something different for her palette and the dragon. What else stood out?
Of all the imagery, the concrete detail was like the smells and the sights and the smells and the what you're hearing and the tick-tock of the roastings of the spit and everything was very grounding. Like,
Mhm.
oh,
I think that's the best part is the imagery. Because the imagery puts the reader in that specific moment. Like she just pulled you into, I don't even know what her novel is about. And that would have sucked me into a novel.
Sure.
That one section.
It could have opened a whole novel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, we have this sort of ungrounded moment when she's pausing, but then as soon as she starts walking up that trail or path or whatever, we are in scene. And with the
Yep.
tick, we get sounds, we get scent. So for short stories like we're doing for this class, yeah, you have to hop right in there just like that, right?
Yeah.
I loved that you got clock and cluck. Well done.
It was hard. I almost forgot.
Well, it was only one word. I was trying to say clock and I don't enunciate well. And so I'm so impressed that you got the word that I didn't mean to say as well. That's nicely done. And I agree with everybody. That sincerity detail was wonderful. And just when I thought we were going to lose it, she steps inside and gets the curry and we're back in it, and we know that her person with her has heard her stomach growl. And so we just were in scene like that. It was really nice. That was fun. Okay, we have 3 people. Not everybody has to read. I'm not sure anybody, but Jess is next.
it was fun being short. Not like Randy Newman's song about short people, but being short meaning that you could fit into airplane seats comfortably and lean over the windows to look at the dazzling lights below. Being short puts one closer to the low displays of baked chocolate croissants and cinnamon rolls you craved. I supposed it could be lonely to be up tall, looking over everyone when a crowd started to move. Of course, it was helpful to have a tall friend to help change the batteries in a clock. Anyway, driving on the freeway, taking a detour here and there, I got a poignant sense of how other people saw short people. The car I drove was not made for my height. It didn't make me angry, but sore, to stretch my legs as far as they could go to hit the gas pedal and feel the power of the engine underneath my toe. It's hard to explain to average people how I have to sit so close to the steering wheel that I hit it when I get in and out of the car. Living in California, where our public transportation system is less than stellar, it was hard to get used to moving back from Asia. I imagine I wouldn't have needed to learn to drive if I'd stayed there. Instead, I could walk and take the train to get my mango sweets or curried rice from the street stalls, where the people were as short as me.
That was so fun.
Mhm.
What stood out? What parts stuck in your brain with Jessica's piece?
As a short person, all of it.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
How many of us are short? I'm not. 4 of you? Oh my goodness.
5'8". I don't think
I'm
that's short.
5'8". Yeah, I
I'm
don't.
5'3".
I'm 5'2".
I'm about 5'3", and I work and live with Jess will know this term, but a lot of friends with Mickey. So I actually do feel tall sometimes because I'm just a few inches taller, but not by
I'm
much.
5 feet tall.
As a Floridian, I got that reference.
You're 5 feet tall, Jessica?
I'm 5 feet tall.
Oh, that's not very tall. It's taller than
But it's
4'11".
still on the taller side with all of Mickey's friends.
Yes, you
Ah.
would be.
When I hang out with Mickey's friends, I do feel a little bit taller.
Nice.
I think it just flowed. Everything just flowed together so seamlessly. Like we're using words that you just threw at us, so it's hard to make it just seem like I don't know. It all flowed together so seamlessly. It just seemed like I don't know how to describe it. I felt relaxed. I don't know.
It was hard to tell, except for when she would do that little pause of emphasis in her voice, which words were thrown, right?
Mhm.
That was kind of cool. I appreciated that. What physical sensations could you repeat back that she described?
Bumping yourself on the steering wheel every day, all the time.
Using
So close to the steering wheel. My mom,
using your toe to push the gas, right?
When
What
she was
about-
describing the croissant, all I thought of is standing there at the display case, and I'm like, feel like a little kid all the time, especially if you see something up higher and you're like, yeah, can I have that? Like way up there.
Yeah, so she really got the physicality of being short, right?
Mhm.
But took it farther, right? So that we got to see like the advantages of it, which when's the last time you heard a short person write of the advantages of being short piece?
Mhm. I like where she said, well, tall people might be lonely too. I'm like, well, yeah, they might be.
My
Especially
husband's
tall women.
6'5",
Yeah, I felt.
Oh my.
I
Wow.
should-
and his first wife was 5'2", 5 foot.
Wow.
Right? How do you do that? Like it'd be all legs. She'd just be looking at his waistband all the time. I mean, he's tall for me. Anyway, so I thought of him when you said that because I was like, oh yeah, I wonder if he's lonely up there. But he's also
My
like,
husband's about 6 feet tall. So when I
yeah,
hug him, I'm like, I can hear your breakfast digesting.
I love that, to be honest.
and us tall people are like, why are you taking the tall people?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's cool. And I love that you had something unique to say about it. And that as we threw words, you're like, nah, I got this already. This is my, you can tell when people are writing, and I don't know why I'm using the word jam, but people are writing their jam, because the words come in pretty easily because you already inhabit that world so comfortably that, it doesn't matter what you get thrown at. You're like, oh, that fits. And that's been working for all of you. It's been good.
I'm gonna ask my brother if he's lonely.
How tall is he?
6'2".
He's probably lonely.
Yeah, my
Both
brother.
my brothers are 6'5".
Oh,
Are
it's funny.
How
They
tall
are, and I'm 5'5". So
His wife is shorter than me, so it's even funnier.
my niece is 16 and she's 6'7".
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I feel sorry for her because my daughter's very petite at 5 foot. And so she's only 1 year younger. So having them together is very awkward. But I'll ask her if she's lonely because she is
Yeah.
tall, very tall. She has problems with her ankles as well.
Oh wow. So does my husband. Huh.
Yeah.
Must be a tall person thing. Well, that is a topic that I think people could write about. Like you could think about that for a little nonfiction essay type thing, or cut it down and make it a flash or whatever. Because I mean, we clearly all were like, oh, I relate. So that's yeah. I hadn't thought about that because I'm a very average height. I think actually at 5'8". I mean, it's becoming.
That's actually tall. Sorry, but it's tall.
5'5" is average. But it's becoming the average. 5'5" is pushing into 5'6". People are getting taller for some reason.
Mhm.
Not me though. No, I'm stuck. I get wider, but I'm not getting any taller.
I've been
That right there. I get wider, but not taller. I go this way.
growing.
Go this way.
Yeah. You're not growing, Jessica.
No.
I am though. I can't even blame it on the pandemic. Okay, does anybody else want to read?
I can read, but I don't even know what words I missed because I couldn't get outside of myself.
It's fine. I mean, the whole point was to write. So if you miss the words, it's fine.
I just randomly, I don't even know what I wrote. I just randomly wrote stuff. So
I know.
bear with me. It was fun being the outsider looking in all the time. I didn't have to worry about anyone looking at what I wore or did. I was free to be me. The insiders were always dazzling the crowds and making it seem as if they had it all together. I craved that sometimes, but for the most part, I liked being the outsider, even though it was lonely at times. The outsiders would cluck at me when I passed them because I wore yellow Crocs till that day when he had to bump into me. It started off as an innocent enough thing. What I thought was innocent enough was what the insiders thought as me coming into their territory and it made them angry. Angry maybe is not the right word. They wanted to show show how much power they really had, what they had over me and all of the outsiders. He didn't see me though. He didn't see it though. He only saw me. I didn't have to explain who I was because he saw through the layers I had built up. He saw me. And that was as far as I got.
That was
I like
really
that, though.
cohesive. Yeah, I don't know how you thought you didn't know.
I did, when you gave me the sentence, I'm like, okay, I just have to write, because that's something that I've made myself do, is challenge myself to think outside of the box. Like, don't pull a story that I've already written or something that I'm working on to just write to write, because I feel like it makes me really think.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and you let your brain kind of do what it wants to do. And
Mhm.
I get some
Even though I was screaming at it, and I'm like, no, 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 change it.
Well, I'm proud of you for keeping going and not changing. That's one of the great things about this throw exercise too, is it shuts down your inner editor a little bit, because another. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, because if you took the time, I almost missed a word because I was using the synonym to figure out what poignant meant exactly, because I have an idea of how to use it, but I didn't know exact meaning and how I was going to fit it in. So you really had to just write. Couldn't really take the time to get it all perfect, because you might have missed something that was thrown out.
Yeah, definitely. So what stood out from Nicole's piece? What do you remember from it? Tabitha?
It reminded me, like, the whole thing as a unit stood out to me, because it reminded me of back in the early 2000s when Lifetime movies used to do the runs on like that Odd Girl Out type of deal. It reminded me of like the intro to those movies. So I was like very much sucked back into like my high school years, kind of being an outsider and remembering those movies. And like, I loved it. That's like, it's literally what it felt like, the intro to like a movie about an odd girl out.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yellow Crocs.
Yep.
I know.
The yellow Crocs.
My son has yellow Crocs, and we always do that. Well, I'll like cluck at him. So when she said cluck, I was like, oh, yellow Crocs. I thought of my 10-year-old.
But I mean, as an image, right? Every one of us would have said that's one thing we remembered from her piece, right? It was unusual. It was vivid. How many people here even own a pair of Crocs?
No.
It's my husband's
But I
fault.
feel like we all know someone who just is really into their Crocs and wears it all the time, and it's like a joke with them, but they love them unabashedly, and it's wonderful. So I like that detail.
They're my slippers. Like, I mean, but mine are purple.
Hey, see, those are nice. I would put those little
The little punch out
little
charms.
things. Yes, yeah,
The
the charm
charms.
things. Yep.
But I mean, that kind of detail. And if you were to use that image, you could add charms to it. Like, you say you were writing a story and you're like, hey, the Crocs will work here. Oh, what charms does this person have? Like, the vivid yellow, the cluck that came right after that. If you had, because I know at Mickey's house, you can buy a bunch of those things that go in the Crocs, right? Yeah. So, I mean, maybe somebody was into Disney, or I don't know where else you get the charms. I don't know much about
Amazon.
them.
Yep, Amazon. That's where we get them for my son.
But they're really comfortable I mean, I don't wear them in public. But yeah, so I mean, you picked a little detail like that just got provoked by one of the words I threw at you, and it's iconic, right? And you all agreed, like, people take sides on Crocs, and I was on the other side until recently. So yeah, so that was a great detail. Anything else from that stand out to you?
I like how she was on the outside looking in, but then this guy who was an insider kind of included her. And then the other outsiders were like, no, we don't really like this. So like, I'm interested to know, did they accept her or not? It really told a story.
He built the tension, right? There's like an inciting incident, and it's got a rising tension right there that makes you want to keep going, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. Which as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, I know a book where this happened. And then I was like, oh, yeah, The Outsiders. You know, the young adult book with the where they can change their whole self.
Mhm.
Yeah. It was just like that. Because
Or was it?
kind of. I mean, the way Jasmine described it, it made me
Mhm.
remember a party scene where an outsider gets to briefly be inside.
You know what? I think the reason why, like, my brain thought of this is because the group that I taught on Thursday, I have a couple of outside kids, like they're on the outside of the group,
Mhm.
and you could so see it. And it's funny because one of them actually, like by the end, and it was a writing group I was teaching, and because she writes so beautifully at such a young age, everyone was so in awe. And then she's like, oh, I get to be a part of something. And I was like, oh, this poor chick, this poor little girl. She was just so happy.
Yeah.
But then I think that like reading it to y'all, that's what was channeling while I was reading. I was like, I bet it came from that little girl, this little 13-year-old who's like 4-0, comes in with these big Coke bottle glasses, and she was just such the outsider in our class on Thursday because it was her first time, and she was so scared. And that was what, when she read her prompt, I gave her a prompt and they had 5 minutes to write on it. And when she read it, I was like, there was dead silence. Nobody could talk because I was like, what? You just wrote that? You're 13.
Oh, that's lovely.
But she finally, like, she, at the end of the class, that's what she was telling us. She was like, nobody really likes me, so it's nice to be liked. And I was like, oh, you're in the group you need to be in.
Oh, that's so hard to hear. I'm like, nerds unite, words matter.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm so happy to be in this world instead of, that 13-year-old world. You couldn't pay me.
Yes.
I used to be there, hated it, don't ever want to go back.
No, neither do I.
Right. Did you want to read, Cass? You don't have to, no pressure, but we'd love to hear it if you want to read.
No, not right now.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I'm going to share screen again. This is so many more skills than I really have. Screen 2, please share. No, this is the wrong screen. Sorry.
I really liked this exercise. We did something like this similar when I was in NaNoWriMo. We had those like group write-ins, and whenever they gave us a word, now we didn't have such a short time, but they would give us a word, and then if we included that word in our manuscript, then we would get a charm of that word.
Oh,
And
how
then
fun is that?
so they collected like a charm bracelet or like a charm keychain of all the milestones you hit, like 10,000 words, 20,000 words, 30,000 words, and then the different things. One of the charms was what she said, that's what she said joke. We had to put that in ours. And if we had that in there and we got it, that was really a rewarding experience for me.
Oh, well, I'm sorry I don't have charms.
Next time.
Yeah, I could see where that would be really great. Although I hate that's what she said jokes because I come from the military, and I'm sure Candy can back me up on. We've heard one too many.
Tabitha can back that up too. Also former military.
Oh, right. I'm looking because I'm missing, when I share, I miss Kelly and Candy and Tabitha. Who is former military? Tabitha?
Yes, Tabitha.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Cool. Okay, so I've shared screen, and the next prompt. I don't want that. So would you rather of the number 2 prompt up there or the number 4 prompt up there? Because we're just not doing the number 3 prompt. That's too much for me to actually. Yeah. Would you rather write about fruits of the spirit that's only sensory detail, or do you just want to write off of I used to be able to for your character? And if you're writing in the third person for your piece and you're working on your piece, just do she or he or whatever used to be able to. Like, you can change the point of view with these prompts anytime you want. Let's do that one because I wanted to see what you all come up with. And do you want me to toss any words during this one, or do you just want to write this time?
Which one?
It's just going to be, I used to be able to,
Okay.
or she used to be able to, he used to be able to, they used to be able to, we used to be able to, but not you used to be able to. That would be too hard to hold together in second person, I think.
And this is for our short story we're writing for class, or just what we were already writing on?
Anything you want to do. So you pick like what narrative it fits into, or start a new narrative, or do whatever you want. This is me just getting your creative juices flowing. Okay, so it sounds like you don't need or want the throws because I got a pretty resounding silence on that one. Which is, so we're just doing, hold on, we're just doing this one right here. Begin with, I used to be able to, that one. Can you see it?
Mhm.
All right, and then I'm just going to set the timer. We've been at this for a while, so I'm just going to do 5 minutes this time because I want to be sure we still have time to read. Does that sound okay?
Mhm.
All right, on your marks, get set, right.
I'll be right back.
Okay, you have a minute left. I'm all like, okay, try to wrap things up. And then like 20 seconds ago, but I didn't have my mute off. Sorry. There will come a time in all of this where I suddenly mute and then just wave at you all. And that will be when my husband drives in and my dog starts barking. He's got the other dog with him, so I'm hopeful it's not going to be as traumatic as it usually is. But I'm just giving you fair warning. So how did it go? I used to be able to. She used to be able to. Did something happen with it? Oh, big thumbs down from Candy. And maybe from Kelly. Oh, I should have done more. I got a thumbs up from Tabitha. Good.
Mine went kind of dark,
Do you
so
need some?
Yours got dark. Okay, well, dark's good. Although people like to scare me and write horror. I tell you, every term somebody writes horror, and I'm just like, oh, huge fraidy cat. Okay, well, of your thumbs up and thumbs down, anybody interested in sharing? Okay, Tabitha's hand is up high.
Okay, I wrote more on my novel, so you guys get to hear a little bit about the main character's internal monologue. So, I used to be able to disappear into my silence. Being in Arantham had begun to take that from me. I wasn't sure if it was the touch telepathy or the empathic sharing, or if it was simply the new friends I found myself with. The ability to make myself invisible through silence had slipped away. Now my silence was noted. Fuelan would take my hand if I grew too quiet, or Belinus would pull me into conversation by asking for a story. Starin, occasionally, would ask about my past. Isolde, the glorious mare that she was, would twist her head back and snort at my boot if I grew too silent on a ride. I wasn't sure if I liked the change, this acceptance. I struggled to understand if it was truly them caring, or if they were doing it to soothe their own discomfort at my differences. After all, their silence often meant that they were communicating with thoughts or touch. And while they had begun being more verbal when I was around, I knew the moment they remembered I couldn't join in because they all seemed to look at me and start conversations mid-topic out loud. Was what acceptance felt like? That's it.
Tell me, what did you think? What stood out? What is a line or something that meant something to you?
I like the loneliness. So you could feel like she's lonely. So she had this great thing. I mean, think about it. You have something and then it's ripped away from you. And then you have people around you still, but in essence, you're still alone. So she, from what I gathered, the character was, they had this power, correct? Am I, and then it was taken away. So when it was taken away, even though she still has people and things or animals around her, she's still alone.
is it taken away, or is it that the other characters always had this capability and her silence used to be a comfort to her? But then when she found out that other people's silences meant something else, then it took away.
True.
Because their
I didn't think
silence
of it that way.
conversing with each other. Is that
Mhm.
right, Tabitha?
Basically, she's from our world and they're in the magical world, and she went there. They're all touch telepaths or touch
She's
empaths and
not.
telepaths. She's human. She's pure human. She has no ability, but she is the outsider from our world. She was an outsider.
Mhm.
So she's used to just being able, when people are just being talked around, to just be quiet and fade into the background, and nobody really cared ever in her life until now.
And so can they read her thoughts?
Yes, if they reach out to her, but she can't reach out to them and join them.
Right. So she doesn't have any privacy anymore.
Though they don't bother her unless she wants it. It's a very strict thing among them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I like
So,
that.
I love the opening words of she could disappear. I could disappear into my silence, is what she says. And those kinds of kind of philosophical ideas almost get a reader thinking. And so I wrote that down because I was waiting to see what if you would then give concrete examples after that. And it was less than a sentence later when you started doing that, which is great, because we can only take that idea for so long before we're like, okay, but do you mean what we mean? You know, and then that's almost like using that metaphor to meet somebody in the middle ground, you know, to say, this is what she used to have, and this is what she has now. So I didn't write them down, but like, you know, somebody would poke her or prod her or say, you know, you're being quiet. It sounds like these other people are just like sort of never quiet though.
No.
Yeah. So
I like the horse's name.
Thank you.
I missed the horse's name. What's the horse?
Isolde.
Isolde?
Isolde.
Isolde.
Isolde. Yeah, Isolde.
Mary
I
Hunter,
like that.
a California writer, has a whole book titled Isolde.
All the horses, they're their own kingdom, they're their own people. It's a fun thing. They're like a whole civilization. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Keep writing. That's all I can say. Keep writing.
Thank you.
All right, who's next? Candy's hand is up. She's not in love with what she wrote, but she's going to share it. I'm proud of her.
Okay. I used to be able to care about people, to listen to their thoughts, their problems, their joys, and their successes. I used to be able to smile when they shared happy news, cry when they experienced heartache, laugh when they said something funny. I used to be able to engage in meaningful conversations with people, talk about life, travels, goals, and even politics. I used to be able to play games that taught valuable skills and engaged the brain. I used to be able to cook a meal and not worry about salt or calories or weight gain. I used to be able to live the life I liked. And then they closed the coffin.
Ooh.
I really like that.
That was
I was not ready.
That went in a different direction than I was expecting, but I like it.
Mm-hmm. I was assuming like
Okay.
they were talking like an older person, like somebody who is like right on the brink. But when you said coffin, I was like, oh, that was so much better.
I was thinking it was like somebody who was just bitter, you know, like they were just like, I'm done with the world. I
Which
don't want to
you
talk to
know.
people anymore. But that is again.
I often think like that, so I loved it. I was like, you need to sleep more. I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know, or you should eat, or like you should, like I should go on a diet. But 75% of the word diet is die. You know.
Valid. That's a valid reason, logic.
So I love the direction of that. There was a good humor to it, even though it, you know, it may seem dark, but it's also not. You know, it's almost lighthearted in a way, at least for me, because I think it's.
No, I would agree. Would you all agree that that twist was intended to make us go, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, so especially in flash fiction, which this is probably close to being short enough for, that twist at the end is what they look for. They want you to surprise us in the end. You know, there's 5 S's that I have written somewhere. And the 5th one is surprise. One of them sensory too. I think one is simile. I wrote them down somewhere. Hold on. I'm going to say them to you because they matter and you will want to write them down. And I'm in my new notebook. Oh, here we go. The 5 S's are setting, situation, sensory detail, simile for figurative language because it's 5 S's, you know, but like metaphors and that kind of thing, and shift. And that shift is the surprise that you offered us. So setting, situation, sensory detail, figurative language, which is simile, and shift or slash surprise. And that surprise at the end, we were all like, oh, you surprised us. That's so great. And that, especially for short stories, and even more so for flash fiction, that's such an important move. Sometimes in a novel, carrying off that big of a surprise makes somebody feel cheated, because if we just work through 278 pages of one thing and suddenly it's all another, we might get angry. I threw a book the other day. Oh, what book was I? So I've been really into these books that have the time difference, you know, like Kate Atkinson's Life After Life, or The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton, or Matt Haig's The Midnight Library, right? Like all of them I love. So they're like, if you love these, read Jodi Picoult's Two Paths. Threw it. And I was listening on audiobook, so I threw my phone. I literally threw my phone, and I was like, oh, that was such a bad idea. But I was so mad at the ending. I was so mad. I was like, you can't do that. So thank you for the surprise and the little brief lesson and the 5 S's that you brought about because of it. I appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you.
All right. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay, Jasmine, and then Jess after you.
I'm not sure if I'm totally in love with what I wrote, but oh well.
Have to be.
I used to be able to put my leg behind my head. I used to be able to walk or run a mile. I used to be able to do many things. Then I left those physical pursuits for the mental pursuits. I used to be able to spot a misspelled word like a beacon. I used to be able to factor trinomials in my head. Then I left those mental pursuits and went with more creative pathways. I used to be able to write without fear. I used to be able to create abstract art. I haven't left the creative pathways, but I've let them become an indulgence. As I meander down distraction detours, I can binge watch a show like no one's business. I will get lost in a story when I could be writing my own. I crave the nostalgia and familiarity of the movies I've watched since I was a child.
That is a meaningful topic.
That sounds like millennials in a
relatable.
nutshell.
Yeah, so relatable.
So relatable.
Well, okay, I cannot relate to being able to put my leg behind my head unless it's not like baby time, because I've never. Okay.
Like I was 10 when I could do that.
Oh, no. By 10, there is no chance. No chance that could happen. So what I loved is, especially as you were using your repetition technique, it was definitely a poem, right? You know, we could see you moving down the lines, even though you didn't probably structure it like a poem. We could see you moving down the lines of what you used to be able to do. And, you know, as you move from one to another, I was like, oh, where is this going to go? So you literally built narrative tension, because I was like, okay, if you gave up the physical and you gave up the mental, here comes creative, and oh gosh, I don't even want to know, like, if creative's going to go, right? So that's another way of building tension, when we've all watched a movie or read a book where we're like, oh, I know what's coming, and you end up having to watch or read what's coming, but you built that tension because you don't want it to come. You want this person to have like a leg behind her head while she's writing a poem, right? Sorry, I took over. What'd you guys notice? Didn't mean to do that.
It was almost like a I don't like using this term, but it kind of is. It was almost like a the word just left my tongue. It starts with a D. Deprecation, like, no, there's a word that it was in my brain and it went away. Like a degradation of like oneself. Like you started out here, like at the peak, because society sees physical as the peak. And then you're like, well, okay, so I can't be physical, so I'm going to be like a genius. Well, that doesn't work. And it's like gradually going on until you like you lose yourself into nothing, into just disassociation. And but then you'll still long for it.
And numbed, right? I love that observation.
Mhm.
And then at the end, numbed to that happening because of like just, Netflix or watching old movies or yeah. Good observation. Anything else? Anyone else? Okay. Well, that was meaningful in my mind anyway. So Jess is next.
Okay. She used to be able to fly across town with all of her books and school materials without even breaking a sweat. But now she felt drained just making a healing potion. Bryce had warned her of the heavy physical toll of keeping someone alive through proxy, but she still hadn't been prepared for the constant fatigue. It was of vital importance that Dieter not suspect a thing. So Helen threw open the curtains and let the sun renew her energy. She smelled the jasmine blooming outside and let it refresh her with its scent. I should harvest some for a relaxing elixir later, she thought to herself. She caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection of the window. When did she get so old? When her beloved lay in eternal youth, preserved through her life-giving magic. That's all I got.
But we know what's going on
Ooh,
for those of
yeah.
us who read your work.
Yeah. So I'm playing with different perspectives with the work that I wrote. And so this is kind of an experiment.
I recognize the characters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, this use of the reflection. Did anybody else notice that?
Mhm.
Like that, because that has so much meaning in literature when you have reflections anyway. And the fact that she's looking so old, did anybody else wonder if like the jasmine and the fresh air and the sunshine, would that rejuvenate her looks at the same time? Or was she sort of this mortal being that keeping her loved one alive is really going to kill her, make her age and make her an old hag somehow?
I thought the spell was taking a toll. And that's why she looked old, because she was doing this complex spell.
I'm very curious if it's permanent. Like when she finishes, like if she stops doing the complex spell, which is an incredible source of tension, right? Because if she stops doing the complex spell, then she loses her loved one. And if she loses her loved one, will she have her youth and vitality back? But then she's lost what matters most to her in life. So like this is a catch. Yeah. Which is good to write about. And how do you it'll be really interesting to see where you go with it, because how do you get your readers on the side that you choose, or choose a side that they don't want? Either one. I mean, you have to write to that. And I think the goal isn't typically to have people throw the book. I mean, like maybe they don't maybe they don't like the ending just because they would have wanted something else. But I throw the book when I'm like, now that's a crap ending. Not that it was a bad choice, but I'm sure Jasmine can back me up on. I felt like we needed to know a little bit more than where that book ended.
Like the Hunger Games. I was never so angry as I was at the end of that. Was it? Yeah, trilogy.
Mhm.
And because of the way I reacted to that trilogy, when my friend read Divergent, she was like, "Don't even read it. Don't do it. You're not gonna like it." But I was so angry because of the way the author took that book.
Don't read Divergent. Trust me. Don't. You'll be so angry. I'm still angry, and it's been like 7 years.
The last book I did exactly, I threw it. I was so mad. I was so mad on Divergent. Hunger Games, I was mad because it's sort of just like
It felt
left
lazy.
you.
It felt
Yeah,
lazy,
like
I'm not
she
gonna
didn't
lie.
know how to end it. Like it was this dramatic story, and then all of a sudden it was like the end. I was like, what?
The deadline for
because
her
they killed
submission
Prim.
was obvious.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, so also a thought, and something I think about a lot because I'm working on a military memoir, if there's peace, what is there to write about? You know, if she said essentially they solved the problem, you know, I would have just been happier wondering if that problem was really solved than knowing she was like in a dress with kids, like being
Like being a stereotype. They literally made her a stereotype. It was so,
Well,
sorry.
they killed off the sister. The sister was the whole point of her
I'm
going into
hoping
the Hunger
everybody's
Games to
read-
begin with.
read it. I didn't think about
That
that.
hurt my feelings. And then it bothered me that I felt like she settled. And that wasn't her persona the whole trilogy. And then at the very end, she settled with PETA when, you know, and she just is like, it was like she gave up.
She
wasn't the
sacrificed
girl
her
on
identity
fire
for his happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it felt like to
It was a
me.
stereotype. Stereotypical.
Also, he was never right for her.
Mm-mm.
So, Jess, you
I never read
haven't read it, Sandy?
never read it.
I
Sorry. It's one of the genres that
Well.
it just never appealed to me.
Ah,
And I tried to watch it, like the movie, because I heard about
Oh, the
it.
movies are worse.
I didn't watch the movie either, but I heard about it, and so I wanted to like kind of figure out what this was all about, and then it was just not. It wasn't the genre that I kind of like geared to, so it has to be something I really want to pick up, and it just never got. I just never got there.
Well,
Save
spoiler
yourself.
alert in case you ever
Save
decide to.
Yeah.
Just save yourself. Save yourself the
Well, and-
disappointment.
I mean, all of it is fantastic until the end. If you just rip when she reads it, we'll make her do it in a physical book and we'll rip the epilogue out and be like,
We'll do like the 11th Doctor does, where he tears out the endings of all of his books so he never has to say goodbye.
Oh, I don't know what this is. What is this?
Dr.
I
Who?
read
Who?
the
Oh, Doctor Who?
epilogue of
Doctor
Harry
Who.
Potter before the 7th book, before I read it, because there were rumors going around that she was going to kill off Harry. And if he had died, I was not going to read it. I would just stay forever at the 6th book. But of course, it was fine.
But you know what? When it comes to things like this, it's why we have fan fiction, so it's okay.
I thought Harry should have died.
This is said with all the love in my heart. What kind of monster reads the end of the book first?
I do. I if I'm like invested in like a trilogy or like 4 or 5 books and I know it's the last book. So Amy Bartol does this all the time with her books. It irritates the crap out of me. She'll get you geared up and then the 3rd book she just like throws it in like a totally different direction. And I'm like, what? I can never finish her books. I love her as an author, but I just read the last part of the last book that she writes in a series and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm done. Like I'll just leave it.
Oh, that's
I can
so
reassure
funny.
you that PC Cast will never do that to you.
Oh, I know. I
Never.
love
Fan of
no,
PC
it doesn't.
So,
I love PC Cast.
Yes.
Jessica, I do want to say that, do you hear what a huge responsibility you have?
I
How
know.
these people feel about these books is what I'm warning you about on your story.
Well, I do the thing that you were talking about before where I don't want to be mean to my characters,
Yeah,
or I don't want bad things to happen to them, but I know I have to. But then it's like, how much conflict is there because it's interesting, and how much will make my reader mad?
Just don't write angst for angst's sake.
yeah, exactly. Tabitha's
Mhm.
right. You need to do mean things to your characters because that's sort of their world. You know, I mean, things bad will happen to them, but it can't be
Oh,
just,
I just read Wuthering Heights again.
yeah.
And that one makes me so mad
Have any of you
because it's just all angst all the time.
Have any of you read Hanya Yanagihara's A Little Life? Huge book. It's really beautifully written, but man, like she's pretty rough on that character. And even in like all the kind of, MFA circles that I hang out in where they're like super literary people, they're all like, she just beat up a character for 700 pages or something. But that's to say, there has to feel like there was a reason for it, what was I just watching or reading? I was just reading The Distant Dead, which is a new book out this year. and it's pretty good. It's a realistic fiction. And I was like, how is she going to recover from this? Because such crap is happening, but I'm positive this is going to have a like kind of an uplifting ending, and she managed to. So not that uplifting is the wrong word. Not everybody crashed and died. So, I think endings, we have a lot of responsibility as writers to try to deal with important issues, and yet, don't leave your readers feeling like they want to end things. You raising your hand, Candy?
Yeah, I had that problem with one of my novels. My Name is Karma. I won't say it was a downer, but it wasn't like the happy-go-lucky. And so when some of my friends who acted as readers for me, they were like, no, she has to have a happy ending. And I was so mad at myself because I kind of gave it that Hollywood happy ending. And I was like, oh, I hate this. But they loved it, but I hated it. And I was like, but my readers were like, oh, I love the ending you didn't do. And I'm like, yeah, but that just wasn't the whole point of the story.
Oh gosh, yes. I had a very special request that came in because I write fan fiction. That's my main thing. Somebody said, I want you to write a fan fiction that rips my heart out, stomps on it, pours salt water on it, throws it into a cactus bush, drags it out, and then put a Band-Aid on it. And I was like, and I did like 75 chapters. And then they were like, thanks, I love it. And I'm like, I hate myself.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a destroyed
Aw.
heart. How can you put a Band-Aid on it?
Wasn't it one of our readings this week? It was one of the Flannery O'Connor ones, I think, where she's talking about how when somebody adapted one of her works into a movie or a show or something, and they changed the ending to suit that medium, and she was like, let's not talk about that because it's not what I
Sorry.
wanted,
Sorry.
That's why
I did
Will
that with the
O'Connor-
other sister, is it the other sister, Jodi Picoult, or the?
My Sister's Keeper.
Yes.
These are
So
the
I
only two
I
Jodi
purposely
Picoult
don't
books I've
read
read.
her because I don't like sad endings. I'm a happy ending girl. So I purposely won't read her books, but I know that they changed the movie ending to make it more mainstream.
I didn't watch the movie. I've read two Jodi Picoult books, and you've now heard both of them today. So I can't speak to that. Anyway, lots of responsibility with endings. We should keep going because I've gone over time now. So who else would like to read?
I'll go.
Thanks.
I used to be able to cry without thinking or laughing without being provoked. I used to be able to think about sad things and not let it bother me and go to my happy place without having to think. Sometimes I still do, but for the most part, I am just there, here in a shell that exists to live day to day, moment to moment, and smile on command. I don't like to cry or feel sad anymore, so I just shut the door on those emotions, hoping that the few times I have to bring them out, I can put on my best performance, because if I allow myself to feel those feelings, I'm not sure what will come out. I know the reason for my acting, and I know why I don't want to open those floodgates. He's the reason why. He's the reason why I don't do a lot of what I have done in the past. He's the reason why I do a lot of what I have done in the past 6 years. He made me promise him to keep living, but sometimes I forget to live for myself. I live for him and I live for my family, but I forget to really live. He taught me to love and the value that I hold in this world. And I wish I could do more, but right now I am just the shell. And that's okay, because sometimes, just sometimes, the shell breaks open and allows me to feel.
All right, what stands out to you in that one?
At the beginning, for me, I was thinking it was similar to, I think, what Jasmine had written, with the thinking of how you gradually like shut down yourself as you get older. And then when you brought in the him character, it's like, oh, it's grief, and the different kind of shutting down. and it added so much weight, but it was established that there was this kind of feeling already, and then it added this concrete, became even more heavy and specific. And I thought it was a great gradual, you didn't drop us into this total grief at the beginning, but it was a gradual weight that you feel, and it made it more bearable for me, I guess.
That's a good way to put it. What else? Tabitha breathed. For me, when you describe that shell and then the emotions being locked up, so I've got the shell, and that's something I understand as a reader. And then I wanted a little bit, I just want a little bit of what that looked like. You know, maybe how people see you. I mean, your narrator, because this is either you or a first person narrator, but how do people see this narrator? Maybe how do they misread the narrator, or what are actions she takes that fits this coldness? Like if she's like trying to be this automaton who doesn't show emotions and just goes through every day, what does that look or feel or sound like? You know, like examples would be really good, because then when she says every now and then the shell breaks open, I mean, I could just picture that. And for some reason, I guess it's the 17-year cycle, but I had a cicada shell. I apologize. But I pictured it breaking open with just like light pouring forth. And somehow I was seeing this as a positive reaction with emotions, but it could have been sad emotions, considering, you know, what Jessica brought up in the middle, where you've shown that this character has, you know, a loss of some boy or man or some male character that causes this. So anyway, that's my response to it. Anyway, does anybody have anything else? Tabitha?
Kind of going off track, but putting it into like, it reminded me a lot being neurodivergent, when you have to mask to appease other people, and you have to please other people, and you spend your entire life masking for somebody, for your parents, for your peers, for your school, for your teachers, for your job, especially in the military, so that when you learn, maybe they're not dead, maybe you just stepped away from them, or you grew past them, and you let that mask fall away for the first time, and people see you for who you are as a neurodivergent, and for the weirdness, the quirkiness, the difference. And it's like, it's so not just freeing, but it's like there's like a chain cut off of you. So that's why I was like, oh, because that's how it feels like when you finally have that confirmation of you as a person being freed. And that's what it made me feel like, that moment of freedom.
So you really resonated with Tabitha. That's great.
I mean, I pictured a dam, you know, like her emotions were being held back by this dam, the ones that she didn't want to feel, and then every once in a while the dam broke and then she had to build it back up again.
Interesting, like a different image. Thanks, Nicole. That was, it resonated, I think, for me anyway, because I also am highly in control of my emotions and wonder what would happen if I let them go. And so I can see where that character, or you, or whatever, you're speaking to people.
No, this is very much me.
Okay.
That's how I'm very controlled. I'm extremely controlled with my emotions.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool to try it out in a group like this, to find out that it resonates with so many of us, because that could mean that you're onto something, you know, because we understand. I control like a crazy person. So nice.
Same.
I think there's just something in writers that's a little bit different than any other art genre, just in my opinion. We're just a different group.
It's for every writer, but it seems pretty common. That's why we control our little words. All right, so the two people left are Kelly and Cass. Do either of you want to read? Cass isn't.
I mean, I can. It's very short. I literally, it was the reason why I did like maybe of like, yes, it was good because this helped me sort of like Tabitha said earlier, like, oh, I figured out the scene. I've been thinking about some scenes for my short story, and I was like, yes, this is what I want. But because of that, my brain like short circuited on like the like keep writing. But I was like, no, but you finally have answers. So like it's very it's so short and it's like very put together. So like I can read it, but it's
Yeah, we'd love that.
okay. So she used to be able to talk to David freely. He was always only an arm length away. Now he was once again within reach. Now they discussed things like plans to buy a house, weddings, and not just as some distant future, but a tangible reality. It felt so surreal, these moments society had been building us towards, and she couldn't help but wonder what came next. There were more gaps in events now. That was all I got because it was a lot.
That since we're all invested in this relationship, it was really great to hear.
Mhm.
So I guess I kind of know what I can find when I get in there today and try to read everything because it clicks. They still work apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's a different perspective. I think I emailed you about, but
Oh yeah, and I need to email you back.
oh no,
Yeah.
it's fine. It was like I was like, before I get too attached to this, I should email.
Yeah, I mean, once you've done a draft, like that's the point of view. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I was
You
thinking
try
of
to-
switching.
you typically try to stick with it, but that doesn't mean that like if you think you got the point of view wrong, you could switch the whole thing. I mean, that's a part of revising. So like if you decide to switch the point of view, that's what your next draft will look like, right? Yeah. I tried writing the novel I was working on. I switched it to first person, and one chapter was all it took for me to realize that was not a good idea. So from Kelly's piece, did anything stand out to anybody? I know she said it's short, but there's still some things in there. I feel like a huge clue is in that moment she says that society is pushing them towards things like marriage and a house and these other things. And that indicates, I think, the characters like, what's the word when you mean kind of like unsure? Hesitance? Like there's something where the characters go and society says we have to do this, which means the character is not including herself in part of society, right? Yeah, so you gave us a huge clue with that one. I'll be really interested to see where that goes. I know with the drafts that were due on Sunday, they like, so I think you could do 1,500 words. Is that how many?
Oh, I did more.
I did more.
I think it's
20
1,500. The max was 2,500, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
25.
sorry.
Yeah.
Give us a heart attack.
I
Yeah,
just,
I was like
I
1,500. Oh my
looked
gosh,
at
I think
it.
I
Don't
did
panic.
24.
Everyone
Like,
went
I did
over by 1,000
it's gonna be fine. It's gonna
I
be
misread. I misread.
Did anyone else besides me hate the word count restriction?
Mhm.
You're all gonna hate it, and you should, because this really closer to a flash fiction. 1,500 to 2,500. I'm sorry, but this is the reason I bring that up is because it never gets longer than 2,500 from here on out in this class. So as you're coming up with ideas or whatever, just know that you're going to try to hit that sweet spot of between 2,000 and 2,500 for the class. It's a
That's
little
okay.
hard. I couldn't say enough times through all the teaching I do with creative writing that having to shorten your word count always improves your writing. And I highly recommend going over the word count, not turned in, and then cutting it down to the turned in length. I just turned in a piece for a little contest, and my husband's yelling at my dog now.
Is it on Vocal?
I had to cut it down by 3 pages, and it was so much better.
Is it on Vocal? Can we read it?
Oh, is the piece what?
Is the piece you said for a little competition? Most people I know write for the competitions on Vocal. Is it on Vocal?
No, it's just a little.
Okay.
It's much littler than that. It's just the Western Literature Association normally has like a literary conference with a little creative writing piece to it. And they're not having a conference this year, but they're still letting us compete for the award for creative writing. So it's just my military memoir stuff. It's not, there's no dragons. There should be dragons.
There should definitely be dragons. There's dragons in my book.
It'd
Not
be a
much to
better
read about.
military memoir if there were dragons. I can tell you that right now.
I don't know. Dragons are pretty fierce. We might have lost more men. That would have been sad.
Unless we
Metaphorical
harbor them for-
dragons.
That's what I was thinking, metaphorical dragons.
Yeah, I know, right?
As long as there's no wizards, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
that if there are dragons, then there should definitely be wizards.
Yeah, you know what? I just haven't had traumatic enough of a life probably to write it. Anyway, do you all have questions for me? Because I've kept you really long. We've done almost 2 hours and I apologize for that, but I've really enjoyed this time and listening to you read what you come up with in such short notice and I just love that part of this. It's so fun.
It's not a question. I don't know if this will help anyone else. It's just something I'm not necessarily good at, but I keep in the back of my mind. The first masterclass I got was Neil Gaiman, and then before a friend gifted me the year package because she was a lovely human. And one of his lectures was sort of on where he said he likes to imagine that he gets charged for the word, like 10 cents or something like that. And so he says, okay, if I'm getting charged for this, I need to make sure it's worth it. And I mean, he said it far more eloquently because he has that beautiful natural storyteller voice, but I don't know if that helps anybody, but I try to keep it in the back of my mind.
No, that's fantastic. It's really good. And what happened for my nonfiction essay anyway, related to this, was I would take out whole paragraphs because I was too thinky, right? I was just like, and then I thought this, but instead I could actually convey it through something I had done. And so, you know, I saved myself dollars and dollars on that essay. At 10 cents a word. Good advice. Anything else?
I have some advice for people when you kind of get stuck and you're not sure what to write, or you think you overthink your writing. Something I do with my writing group, we set a timer and we write for 35, 40 minutes at a time, just straight. And we're not allowed to backspace. We're not allowed to go back and change typos. You just have to write straight and then count your word count. And then what that does is it just, if you're not worried about backspacing, you're not worried about correcting, you're not worried about doing anything, just it helps a lot. And then you can go back and trim, but you'd be surprised when you take away that anxiety perfectionist of, oh, I misspelled this word, I have to go back, and you just leave it alone and just keep going, how much more quality your writing becomes, because now you're not backtracking and having to find your train of thought again. That's just, trust me, it's a good method.
It's really good advice. I know that the NaNoWriMo people recommend that as a technique. Yeah. And also because you're not in those little details, all of a sudden, like for me, the Great Gate of Amagia showed up. And I was like, what's that? You know, because it freed up the creativity in my mind. And suddenly, you know, a lot more fun things could emerge because I wasn't trying to figure out how to spell a word like poignant, right?
That's what I teach my kids as well. My high school and middle school students, I teach them the same thing. I told them they have to be uncomfortable to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So you have to be really uncomfortable to be comfortable. And our first exercise before we start anything is to write nonsense. So I just want you to ramble and just write absolute nonsense. And you will see so many students like freeze up, like, wait a minute, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't care about capitalization, periods. I don't care spelling, punctuation. They're like, what are you talking about, Miss Launder? I'm like, just write nonsense. And they think I'm crazy.
Yeah, it's hard, but it's good advice.
Yeah, it's very good advice.
I have a question if anybody has any advice for balancing multiple projects. So I am very like, I want to work on this story, right? Like I'm working on my novel, but then I have classes, so I have to do research for other topics. And then I'm suddenly reading Beowulf for this, and I'm suddenly writing a short story for this. And I'm going, I don't even remember who is anybody anymore. Yes.
So I am also in the middle of writing a novel, and I have 2 work in progresses for another writing project and then 2 master classes, and I work. What I do is I allot myself 700 words a day for my novel, and then I pick a day of the week for each of my classes. So like this class I have Tuesdays and Thursdays. My other class is Mondays and Wednesdays, and then that leaves freedom to do your other things. But if you want to, especially with your personal stuff, if you give yourself a limit, like you do not let yourself write more than 700 words a day. You're like, nope, at that 700 word, you put it down, you walk away, no matter what your flow is, because otherwise you're going to get sucked into it, because that's your dopamine, that's your serotonin payout. Because the other ones we have to wait for a grade to get our payout. So it helps a lot if you set yourself a limit per day to do.
Well, and the great thing about that is when you stop at a limit, you still have something to say. And I can't remember who gives that advice, but somebody says you should always be, it was Peter Heller. Always have in mind the next thing you're going to write when you stop, so that you don't like dry up, because you'll still be thinking of where the story goes when you write. So that's really good.
Also, you won't burn out. You will not burn yourself out.
And the other little piece is you let Beowulf inform what you're doing with your story. I mean, are you in the medieval literature class?
I'm in the topics in British literature.
Oh, okay. Because medieval literature does that, and I'm team leading that instructor. He's really amazing.
I should have taken that class. I'm taking 20th century American Lit, and I hate it here.
I think that's what my next class is.
Oh, goody. I think maybe mine too. I don't remember.
So you all don't get to take just all creative writing classes?
No.
No, a lot of literature class. I just had, I had theories and lit, and then
Yes, we were in the same. We were
that
in
was
the
the
same
worst
class,
class
I
I
think.
ever had. So
Yeah,
That was
literary theory,
horrible.
American literature, British literature. But the thing with the topics class is it's so fast. So the first week was Beowulf and Chaucer and everything, but then by now week 5 I'm doing Dracula, and
Yeah.
we're in the Victorian era. It just goes so quickly.
British literature is so long too. Yeah.
I just want you guys to know that 20th century American literature is torture, and I don't like it here.
I'm sorry to hear that. That would have been a class. I don't think that they qualified me to teach that, but I could have taught that, which.
thanks for
that.
that
Much rather.
portent of evil there that I'm about to go into.
Has anybody taken the linguistics class? Because I just finished
Yes.
that.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love the
love it.
linguistics class.
I like playing with words, so I was like, oh, this is so my
Were you
thing.
guys in that class with me? Was it the English
No.
as a language, a linguistic class?
I recognize
Yes.
Language
your
class,
name
yeah.
from various classes, but I couldn't tell you which ones anymore.
I think we were in lit theory together.
I blocked that from my memory.
Say.
My advisor congratulated me on getting a perfect grade on the final paper, and I literally went, how? I literally don't even know what my point was, but sure, thanks.
I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't write that final paper, so I
Oh,
got hotly
gosh.
it. I'm not even gonna lie. I couldn't do it. It was so torture.
The linguistic class, I did mine on e-coming, so it was really interesting that you brought him in to the beginning. So we had to pick one author and like 3 works from them.
Yes. Jasmine, we were in
Yeah.
that